On the side of
Well,
trucks.
let's stay 6 feet away.
Thank you.
Okay, so I want to skip reviewing the notes from the December 9th meeting because I don't have a quorum of people that were here.
The expected form?
Hoping. Yeah. So we'll just jump right into the expansion of the rec pier report presentation.
Can you hear me okay from here, or do you want me to come up? What's easier?
I might be able to hear better. I don't know how this records either.
That's all right. I can
If
come up
you're a
in case
little
it
closer.
records. Sure. No, I'll come. Is it okay if I sit at the stage?
Of course it is.
Absolutely. I'm a furniture rearranger.
So what you see in front of you is a draft copy of the report that you've been commissioned to prepare for the select board to provide some more detail on the proposed pier expansion of the plans that were received from Gartley and Dorsey back in July. So I'm going to kind of walk through it, and I do have a couple of questions as we go, just to get input. So the report starts with just a brief introduction as to why we're putting this together. It's, you know, the Waterfront Committee undertook in order to put this report together. So the interviews with the other harbors, speaking with Public Works and Parks and Rec, and obtaining current revenue and expenses from the town office. And then we go into just a project history and description of the proposed improvements. So, you know, you received a shore and harbor grant from the Maine Coastal Program in 2020 to engineer the expansion of the rec pier facility. You engaged Gartley and Dorsey as engineers, and they came up with a proposal that extends the floating dock and includes installing water and electric lines, as well as a renovation of the harbor master building to include a shower and a bathroom and a laundry room. In here, so you'll see that the full Gartley and Dorsey plan's attached, but as part of this report, we give the rough cost estimate that was provided, knowing that it is just an estimate, and then also talking about the approvals that will be required in terms of regulatory permitting. And then the report, starting on page 4, goes into possible funding sources for project construction. And it talks about 2 potential grant programs. The first is Maine DOT's Small Harbor Improvement Program, or SHIP. And the second is the Boating Infrastructure Grant, or BIG. And it gives, you know, just a summary of the funding, eligibility, the match requirements, application documents, etc. And as we've discussed before, it probably makes sense for this project to apply for the SHIP grant program with Maine DOT, just given funding, match, and eligibility requirements. So beginning on page 5, we start talking about potential revenue and expenses. So this is where all the interviews that you've done over the past few months with public and private marinas starts to come into play. So you'll see at the top of page 6, there's the summary of the marinas that you interviewed, broken down by private and then public. And then there's a chart that starts on 6 and goes on to page 7, where out of all of these interviews that you conducted, you started to narrow down the scope of those marinas that are most in line with the same amenities offered as Wiscasset's proposed expansion would offer. And those amenities that match what Wiscasset will have are bolded under each of the marinas, and it includes the seasonal fee as well as the daily fee. So it's kind of a large table because there's a number of marinas that we talked about. But then we get kind of into the meat of it, starting on page 8, talking about potential revenue. So based on the average and seasonal nightly rates for the marinas highlighted in the table preceding this section, the distance to open water from the Wiscasset's recreational pier, the state's directive that fees be considered reasonable as part of the Shore and Harbor Grant, we're proposing a seasonal rate of $80 per foot. As discussed in the November 23rd meeting of the Waterfront Committee, the season would run from May 1st to October 15th annually, which would be in line with the pier vendor schedule. An electricity usage fee for seasonal renters will be determined probably down the road, but the committee expects that the usage would be metered and a fee will need to be determined. We also talked about the potential to rent slips in the off-season, so meaning November and April annually, on a monthly basis for a nominal fee. This is because the pier is located in a hurricane hole, and as well as the river doesn't ice over, so there is potential for boaters to stay in the water year-round if they want to. Then we talked about an overnight rate of $3.35 a foot. So this would be for overnight transient guests who may stay, 24 hours, a couple days, up to a week. And the transient dockage fee of that $3.35 would include the use of electricity and water. We also have under here potential other fees. So the Waterfront Committee has discussed the possibility of charging for the use of the showers, laundry room, trash removal, water. These fees have not been calculated as part of the analysis at this time. We've also talked about the use of the pump out station to be free of charge, unless there's a way to have a minimal fee to offset the cost of an attendant, but that's dependent on the requirements of the grant funding for the pump out station, and we would need to research that further. So on page 9, we give two potential estimates in terms of revenue. The first is for 12 seasonal slips to be rented and 2 transient slips to be rented. In order to get to these calculations, we estimate an average boat length of 25 feet for seasonal slips and 20-foot boat length for the transient slips. And we're also trying to be conservative in estimating how much usage the transient slips would receive. So we also estimated at a 30% occupancy for the season. So under estimate 1, the revenue for the 12 seasonal slips would be $24,000, and the true transient slips rented at 30% occupancy for this season would be $6,753.60, which is an annual revenue of $30,753.60. Estimate 2 uses the same calculations but changes the ratio of seasonal to transient slips. So it reduces the seasonal slips to 10 and increases transient slips to 4. And that annual revenue under estimate 2 is $33,507.20. So it's pretty good. Potential expenses is a little bit murkier in that we give a very preliminary estimate and just note that this estimate is probably going to need to be refined if the project moves forward, and will partially be dependent on the types of materials chosen for construction, as well as the anticipated operation of the pier, and also an estimate for materials such as toilet paper, paper towels, and the like for the harbor master building is going to be determined. We did hear from Ted Snowden, the Public Works Director, that he estimates the maintenance, cleaning, and collection of fees for the pier expansion will be approximately $10,000 per year to pay for a part-time employee to perform the work. If the fee collection responsibility shifts to the harbor master, this estimate may need to be amended. So what we've done here is using that $10,000 estimate just for rough calculation purposes, we subtracted it from those estimates 1 and 2 on the previous page of revenue, and have come up with an adjusted revenue of between $20,753 and $23,507. So given those adjusted revenue calculations, it's estimated the project could pay back the match requirement for the SHIP grant in under 9 years. It comes to about 8.5 years when using the lower revenue end under estimate 1. We also thought it was important to talk briefly about the marketing of Wiscasset and the expansion of the recreational pier. We're going to be competing with several marinas in the region, and I think as a new recreational asset, it's going to be attractive to boaters. But we'll definitely need to implement a marketing plan with industry and tourism groups, our own social media, including updating the town's website, partnering with industry offices like Cruise Maine, Waterway Guide, the Maine Office of Tourism, as well as the local chambers of commerce. And we do note that these services may require a fee, but the Waterfront Committee does believe that investing in marketing the recreational pier in downtown will be beneficial. And we could also research possible leveraging opportunities and explore those in the future. So the last 2 pages, 11 and 12, are just conclusions and recommendations. You'll see the bullet points kind of summarize what I just went through in terms of fact. And then The recommendations are that the Waterfront Committee recommends the town apply for the DOT SHIP grant in 2022. And we know that it will need to go to town vote in June to allocate the match requirement for the project. And that match roughly would be around 175,000. That would need to be refined and discussed more with Gartley and Dorsley, just because the proposal's from July, and certainly, you know, with fluctuations in the market, that may have changed slightly since July. So the questions I have for the board as you start to review this are, do the rates for seasonal rates as well as the overnight rate seem reasonable, or do you think those could be adjusted? And I asked the same question of Larry, and hoping you could add some input as well. And then also, just the estimated expenses, given what we have so far, seem reasonable, or would you like to research that further?
So the estimated expenses, the $10,000 is in addition to already the assumed expenses at the waterfront.
Correct. So we looked at the numbers that you were able to pull for us, and that I think I'd have to have a sit-down conversation with Dennis to really understand what is included in each of those line items, because it's for waterfront in general, not just the rec pier. So if I wanted to compare apples to apples, we'd have to do some probably more digging. So really, this potential expenses section on page 10 is really looking at comparing what the above and beyond expenses would be compared to what they are today, and then also and then looking at those in conjunction with the estimated revenue from this project.
Thank you.
So is there potential for more revenue? Did you take into account the 3 moorings and then the regular float that we rent out in the summer?
Yeah, so certainly there's potential for even more revenue. The moorings we had talked about, and we think, you know, those could probably rent it on an overnight basis, maybe for a week. The committee was concerned about renting them, say, for a seasonal, like you would a seasonal slip, just because there could be liability issues.
We have enough to do that. But
Right.
I know some of the questions I got, I think the 335 is good. I mean, maybe
Okay.
it's a little low, because all the boats that came in that wanted to spend the night, they all 100% commented how low the dollar a foot was.
Okay.
So I know they're willing to pay more.
Okay.
I felt kind of bad because you got a $200,000 boat coming in paying $30 to spend the night. You know they can pay a lot more. But I didn't see, what is the overnight? I mean, it was like $1 a foot or $30. So if you had a 60-foot boat, you're still paying $30. Are we just sticking by the footage?
Yeah, so
Is that the plan
that $3.35 would be by foot. So we averaged in our estimate on estimates 1 and 2 just a 20-foot boat length. So it would come to $67 a night for a 20-foot boat with that $3.35 fee.
Okay. And I know just something for the board to think about. I know we had, especially with Schooner Fest coming in, we had a boater that stayed on the mooring for longer than a week, and he wanted to know if he got a discount for staying, you know, that long. I did give him a little break at the end because it was a storm, and he wanted to stay an extra night because he didn't want to go out in the storm. Like the moorings, the moorings aren't going to be by a foot. That's going to be so much a night, I'm assuming, right? To rent a mooring.
I think so. This is really just for the slips themselves.
Yeah.
What we were figuring.
Yeah. But I think when we figure out whatever we're going to do, we should figure it all out together.
Yeah.
And it would be convenient if there's a way to do it. I know we're talking about the online mooring thing, but with the technology out there, a lot of these boaters, I mean, they could pay online before they even got here, if the town had that capability. And I don't have any figures to go by as far as the 30% transient. I don't think we have the records to know.
Figure that out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you think $3.35 a foot for a transient on the slip is reasonable? From what you've heard in the past?
From what I've heard, yeah. I mean, I even think the $100 annual fee for the mooring is, I mean, we got people coming in that don't, from out of town because our mooring rates are so cheap. So,
Interesting. Interesting. Anybody have any questions for Emily? At this time?
Actually, in-kind services also available in those maps as far as,
That's one of the things we'd have to find out from DOT. So in here, I recommend that the next step, if the select board agrees to start pursuing the grant application, it's a rolling deadline for the SHIP program. So and they recommend that you have kind of a pre-application meeting with DOT representatives. So I think we find out in that meeting.
What's the deadline?
So the nice thing is because it's a rolling deadline, we don't have to, yeah, we can just file
That's what you meant by
whenever,
that.
yep.
yeah, sure.
What did you call that pre-application meeting?
Yeah,
Is that what it was called?
yeah, I think it's a fair term to use.
Okay.
Does anyone think there's anything missing in here that would be beneficial to provide to the select board in terms of information? I mean, I think you have a really solid pitch here, and you've done a lot of data analysis. But I don't know if there's anything else that committee feels could be added to this.
Address the we can tell.
Is there anything in here that talks about dredging, that, are they gonna even have to do dredging?
So, that's okay. I talk about it briefly under the, on page 2, it's the last paragraph. So Gartley and Dorsey doesn't expect that dredging is going to be proposed as part of this, especially because there's a significant ledge deposit that's located below the area of the proposed expansion. So that's why they designed it
More
as they
out.
did,
Yeah.
rather than in another part of the river.
So we have determined that renovating that building is cheaper than tearing it down and building new?
Yeah, so that's what Gartley and Dorsey have pitched. I don't have the original application in front of me as part of the Shore and Harbor grant, but my understanding was that yes, it'd be cheaper to renovate it than it would to try and tear down. I also think it'd probably be easier from a permitting perspective than trying to tear down and build new, because you already have an existing building that you're going to be renovating in its footprint, so it's already been previously approved by the regulatory agencies.
Okay, so, what's next, Ethan?
So, I don't know if you want to let everyone digest this a little bit more and vote at your next meeting.
That's what I'm kind of thinking. I feel like we still have time, don't we, Dennis?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like the whole committee to
Mhm.
chime in.
Sure.
especially.
And that way, if you have changes, certainly you can let me know and I can make a revised draft in advance of your next meeting.
Oh, this is a beautiful job.
Thank you.
So, as we're trying to pitch this and increase activity in revenue at the waterfront, I can see where the slips and the moorings, I can see where it's all gonna sort of come, filter in together, because basically the slips will fund at least half the waterfront budget.
Yeah.
I'm just, I know it's important to stay on task, but it sort of all works together.
It does. So I think really this proposal is to fund this plan as of right now. So
Okay.
certainly there's more considerations in terms of overall revenue, like the moorings.
Mhm.
And, if you were to get kayak slips down the road, you would have to consider, do you charge for that? But at least for this proposal, we're really only looking at what Gartley and Dorsey has designed and
Okay.
engineered. But certainly, if we were to pursue that SHIP program and start to actually come up with how this is going to function in an operational way, those conversations and decisions are going to have to be made. Do we move forward, does the town move forward with an app program that does the moorings as well as rentals? So if you have someone coming up, they can reserve a slip and pay for it before they come up. Same with a mooring. So I think those decisions are gonna be done hand in hand as far as how the waterfront functions as a whole, as this starts to be constructed.
Cool. Thank you. Anybody have any more questions for Emily? At this time? No? You did a good job, thanks.
And certainly get in touch with me between now and the next meeting if you have any changes or questions.
Yeah, which by the way, her phone number and email are on your phone list. Yeah, good.
Can we share a preview of this with some members of the board?
Say it again?
Can we share a preview of this with members of the board to get their questions ahead of time also?
I don't see why not, this is a public meeting, so, and we're on Zoom or YouTube, so.
This is a big deal,
Mhm.
and
It's,
it would be lovely to have a chance for more.
Yes. So we'll probably at least have another meeting with the waterfront committee before, you know, and then they'll go to Dennis and then get on to the selectmen's
For
agenda. I
January.
presume. We were shooting for January, right, Dennis? Yeah. Sometime January, probably later January. What I'm thinking. Okay. Good. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Okay. All right, Larry, anything to report harbor master wise, or was it just your little November report that I sent around?
Well, the November report was kind of small, you saw, but I mean, I've been busy the past few days. There's a lot of junk on the float, and the fishermen hauling in gear and pulling up rope, and whatever reason, they haul it as far as the float, and they figure it's public works' job to take care of it after that. But, so
Was it
there's
like trash?
Ted's going down to clean up, I mean, a ship pile of rope down there. And there's some traps abandoned down there, he's just gonna chuck those. I talked to Ted about pulling the commercial floats, one of them needs to be repaired, so I put on the Facebook page, the Harbor Master Facebook page, that it was gonna be pulled out next week, so that prompted a lot of phone calls from fishermen. So, the majority asked that we keep it in until the middle of January, because some of them still got some traps out. So I told them that I would talk to Ted about holding off until the middle of January to pull it, to allow them to get their traps in and stuff. Other than that, I mean, that's about it. I basically, I got a call today from one of the diggers about the worm carts. Want to know if he can move them on the other float temporarily until we get our float, the commercial floats back in. And I don't want to tell them they can't. I mean, they still got to work, so I told them they could do that. But I don't think it's going to be an issue if it is all the rest of it at that time.
Thank you. Have you, did you ever connect with online mooring?
We did, that's why Callie's here. We had a Zoom meeting with them yesterday. I'm kind of impressed on everything that it can do. There's probably a lot that it can do that we don't even know yet. The initial, it's going to be a lot of work to get it set up, and that's where Callie's going to come in. So, do you want to say anything, Callie? No. But I think once it gets up and going, but before we go too far, we need to know what we're going to charge for mooring fees. Is it going to be the same? We're going to keep everything the same for now. We're going to change it. If we're going to change it, this would be the time to change it before we get everything all set up. The fee they charge, as you're aware, is $6 or more, and that's going to get passed on to the mooring owner, so it's not going to cost the town anything. There's a couple different ways we can get our money, and maybe Dennis can enlighten me on this. They said we could set up like a direct deposit, so that the online mooring company collects all the money, and then once a month or once a week or however they want to do it, the town wants to do it, they can just either send us a check, direct deposit into an account, or however we want to do it. So,
and then they would bill us for those $6 application fees. Or we can set it up so that they take all of the money, they take out their $6 application fees and then send us.
which I think is probably the cleanest thing to
That
do.
sounds clean to me.
Yeah.
So-
But the way this is gonna work, once somebody plugs in their mooring information, there's actually like a Google Earth part of it that actually plants their mooring on the map. So we'll be able to pull up the map and see all the moorings. That's gonna be a good way to tell us which ones are ghost moorings and which ones we can pull. But we gotta figure out as a group how we wanna do that. The way it was recommended, which was it?
So we have a spreadsheet currently. I'm not super familiar with it, so I hope you have no question. But it has the current mooring holders. It has their GPS location and all of their personal information on there. Once it's all updated, we can send it to this company. They will plug everything in for us, and that will be done.
But they only do that once.
Right.
So they told us to make sure we have our information.
So we have to make sure
And
everything
then we
is
get everything we want in, because after that, they'll charge us if they have to do it.
right. So after that, it would be that either I plug it in or a new person will plug it in. However, next year when all of these people go to renew, that information is already going to be there, and all they have to do is update whatever they need to update and then pay. So it will just keep rolling forward.
Okay, so you're saying that if somebody, like, okay, so you send in the whole list of everyone that's got a mooring in the harbor and that's renewing it.
Well, we
this
have a
year.
list. How accurate it is, I have no idea.
So would you suggest sending that whole list and then, because I mean, I know mooring owners come and go.
Right. Well, I
So
think what we talked about, and Dawn and I talked about it a little bit yesterday, is getting hands on every mooring and somehow numbering them.
Mhm.
The online mooring people recommended we get some sort of a, what is it, like a 4x9 sticker. And for any mooring that we don't know whose it is, whatever, we kind of put that sticker on it, giving them so many days to contact us. And at a certain date, if nobody contacts us, we pull the mooring.
Would they have to wait till spring, like when there's a ball there? Or are there balls out there?
Yeah, Dawn said it's hard to do it now because a lot of people, to preserve that chain, I guess they pull the ball off and just let the chain sink in the mud, and I guess that preserves it. So it's nothing we can do right now.
So wait till spring.
Yeah.
You have to have all appointments and all that for every mooring too, when you send out all the information.
Technically, we should already have all those. But like I said, I mean, we have moorings that haven't been paid for in years, and we have other moorings that out there that we have no information on. So,
It's a loose list.
say what?
I said it's a loose list.
Yeah. So I think the biggest job for Callie and I in the next couple of months is going through that list but they even charge, the online mooring people, they even charge for people on the wait list. Like you're on a wait list, you go on and fill out, and that kind of secures your spot. So, but I don't know why we still have a wait list, other than we're waiting on the mooring people to set the moorings, because from what I've been told from everybody that sets the moorings and Dawn, and everybody that's familiar with the harbor, there's all kinds of room for more moorings. So I don't know why we had a wait list of, upwards of 30 people.
Here. Is there a way to like contact those people and ask them?
On the wait list?
Yeah.
I've already done it, I've contacted
And what
everyone.
do they say?
Yeah, they would still want their mooring.
So they want a physical mooring in the harbor?
They want a spot, they want permission to reach out to Dave King or Ted, Christie?
Christine.
To put the mooring in, but Dave and Ted aren't doing any more moorings until spring, so,
And there's 30 people waiting to do that?
well, that's what the
Or
list
so?
was. It's down to 15 right now.
Okay.
But I'm still getting calls. Some people have got tired of waiting and went elsewhere. But other people got a mooring and then a year later wanted to get rid of it because of the bird poop, so.
Okay. So, what do you think is next and what do you need from us?
I don't need anything from you unless you want to raise the rates of the mooring application.
Yeah, on that line, I have to have a discussion with the selectmen about every fee we're charging in town anyways, so I'd like to just just do that all at one time rather than piecemeal it. We need to review everything that we're doing.
Larry, do you have a suggestion for a mooring fee?
I had one guy that just bought a mooring. He actually bought Ted Snowden's mooring, and I think he's got a buddy that's got a mooring down to Yarmouth, down that way, and he pays, he said, and I don't know, he said he pays like $3,000 to have that mooring. So, but I don't know if that's true. I don't know what other towns charge for mooring. Maybe that's something we can figure out, but,
We have some of that information. don't we?
Well, as part of the review on
No,
these.
no
Yeah.
moorings.
I think we're paying what?
Yeah, it was on there.
$150
Yep,
So,
I'll get it.
per resident.
And is
You got it
there-
online.
Pay more than resident, I know that.
So some were higher.
The only number of members.
Yeah.
The mooring fee.
Some on here are,
I was gonna say, there's one on here, 1,100,
there's one for 14.
Ocean Road, East.
Now, the mooring fee in Northeast Harbor is 56 for resident and 106 for non-resident.
You know, and maybe you gotta look at what, I mean, I've had people come in and wanna spend the night, and they come in and get off their boat and walk downtown and say, well, I'm staying here, and they go back and they go to Blue Bay. Because there's nothing to do after 5 o'clock in town,
Mhm.
you know, go to Waterfront, well, you know, I mean, there's nothing for them. Everything on Main Street's closed. So, but I guess, you know, you're working on that, right?
We're hoping to.
So, but that's what I mean, I don't think you can charge a whole lot if you don't have anything to offer them.
Well, yeah, we're still a work in progress.
Yeah.
So I think just the permit right now is $50 for, like, a regular,
More?
recreational mooring, yeah.
It's
Commercial, I
$50.
think, is 150, and corporate is
See,
like
I
200.
don't even know that, I haven't been through the application process yet, this will be my first one, so.
Something we can do together.
Yeah.
How thrilling.
But I do know, I see them get mailed out every year, and it's like, I've always wondered why we do that. And this will stop that.
Yeah. Good.
The other fee you need to think about is if they choose not to go online and do it and come in and have us do it, what you want to charge them for that too.
Yeah, so if somebody doesn't have a computer, they don't have that technology to go online and do that, they can come into the office and Callie can plug all that information in, and, you know, there's like maybe a $10 fee with that or whatever.
So she'd be doing it as if she was them, she'd be doing it on the online mooring program?
Yeah.
Yes.
So why not, wouldn't it still be the $6 or $10? Yeah.
Yeah, maybe a
So
little like.
they take $6, and then we make $4. Do I understand that right? If
No,
she's
I would
doing
add
it
another
on-
$10 on top of it. To
Oh,
make
you'd
it
add
less,
another $10?
to make it less enticing to come in and have us do it.
Okay.
Because, I mean, they can go to their kid and have the kid do it, I mean, you know what I mean?
Right.
The less work we have to do, the better.
Sure. Understandable. Okay. Anybody have a question for Larry? Or Callie?
It looks very simple and straightforward. That's the other thing I would say about it. It's not a complicated looking process, and we have the ability to adjust the application itself. It doesn't have to be a 25-page application. We can keep it as simple as we want to.
Okay.
And they allow us the ability to upload, like when they have their insurance that we have to keep track of, they can upload a picture of their insurance and plug that information into, and registration as well.
Oh, nice.
Yes, and it would all be in one central location.
So what happens, just say, if their insurance lapses? Would you get does anyone get a notification?
Yes, we can look at reports on there. We can see who's paid, who hasn't paid. It will like highlight them in red, and it will show like a little symbol of what they do or don't have. And we can, you know, we can see all that. We can pull a report and look right at it and have it right at our fingertips.
Okay, nice.
Hmm.
And can you do separate, like, applications, say, like, commercial versus recreational?
I
Like
don't-
when the fishermen sign up for, their mooring application, or they don't, do they do a mooring application and a commercial pier use application?
I think it's just a box they check whether
I think it is
recreational or
too.
commercial.
So it's all the same application?
Yeah, I mean, the other thing too, I mean, that fee, some of the applications I've seen, like that fee so they can park on the rec float after October 1st, some of the applications have that, some of them don't. So there's multiple applications up there floating around. And I don't know, I mean, I don't know if that's something we want to keep doing. I mean, it sounds to me like a lot of the fishermen want one of them seasonal slots. So, but,
So that's a question that came up because the grant that we got to do this draft, you know, the slips, was for the expansion of the recreational pier, and I don't know, I mean, do other places that rent slips rent to fishermen and recreational boaters? And
I have a lot of recreational boaters reach out to me and want to know what they owe, and they're only coming in for a few hours, and I said, if you don't spend the night, you don't know anything. But at the same token, I mean, I feel kind of bad, I mean, like we have residents, I mean, I had one resident that had a problem with his boat, and he brought it off his mooring to work on it, and he had to leave it overnight, and he reached out to me, and I didn't have the heart to charge him $30. You know, I mean, he's a resident, he pays taxes, so I don't know if we should take that into consideration. I mean, I don't know. I mean, if I have a boat and I want to take my family down and I feel like I'm getting charged twice, you know, if I have to pay to put my boat in. I don't know, that's just me. I mean,
You should have discretion.
well, it is, but then you get accused of being, you know, showing favor to other people. I mean, so, but I feel like I do have discretion and I can do that, but I just feel like it's easy for someone else to look in and say, yeah, you let him do it, but you won't let us do it. But, so I just think when we start thinking fees, I just think we gotta take residents into consideration, you know, I don't,
And maybe situations too.
yeah.
Because if you're working on your boat, that's kind of an emergency situation versus having fun.
Yeah. But most of the people I deal with down on the waterfront aren't residents, so tourists coming in. So,
I think we're gonna be working on a lot of new policies and
yeah.
procedures, which is
I'm actually,
exciting.
I'm looking forward to this online warrant. I'm actually looking forward to getting to know what's out there for warrants.
Yep.
I mean, I think it'd be a good thing, and I think, you know, this whole thing, with the direction you guys are headed with revenue, I think there's a lot of revenue to be made there. But I think in order to do that, you gotta put some revenue into it.
Agreed. Well, too, once you know what some of the moorings that are out there and some of those ghost ones that if they don't get claimed, we can maybe use them for other transient overnight boaters.
Well, I'm
Get
assuming, I mean,
claimed.
if there's moorings out there that are ghost moorings that haven't been used, I mean, those may be moorings that these people on the waiting list could take and, you know, they may have to do some maintenance, you know, change the chain on it and whatnot, but there's also a place on this, online mooring where you can go on and it'll tell you who's paid, who hasn't paid. They'll either have a green dollar sign or a red dollar sign. And if Callie wants to send an email out to remind people, you know, to update their thing or pay their mooring fees or whatever, she can send one email to everybody that hasn't paid. So it's not like, you know, you're making 15 phone calls or sending 15 letters. So that's the convenience of it as well.
And they allow us to have templates so that we're saying the same thing every time and you don't have to try to remember or anything like that. Yep.
Nice.
And for people who don't have an email, they will generate a letter for us. I did not get a straight answer out of him as to whether or not they're the ones who send it or if it's us.
I think it's us. I think it's a
But-
PDF that we print out.
Right, but either way, they will
Cool.
Yeah.
generate it for us.
I'm not seeing the downside.
No.
Good. Good.
And I talked to a couple other towns who are actively and nobody had anything bad to say.
And maybe, I mean, if the select board's gotta approve all the fees or whatnot, I mean, maybe we don't wanna change the mooring fees yet, maybe we just wanna get this program up and going and then adjust the fees at a later date, but at least that won't hold us up from moving forward.
Mhm. I can go either way, you know. Alrighty. Any other questions or comments for Larry and Callie? No? Alrighty. So, we're gonna move on. Okay, Dick's been working away getting figures together for our bathroom project, and he's not here, so I guess that will have to be put on hold till next time. In your little pile of papers, there's a draft of the revised peer policies and applications. And what I'm kind of, well, we can go over it tonight if you want to, or you can take it home and give it some thought. I changed the font from what I changed, or that we discussed.
So that kind of brings that to the front by doing that font. It looks.
Okay, so that worked
Yeah.
because I
Well,
had, it's red on mine,
Yeah.
but I had to print black and
Yeah.
white. So
When is the next meeting?
our next meeting in,
Gonna try to do one in a week?
no,
You don't think so?
do you want to do
Well,
one in
no,
a week?
is
It's the
it-
23rd of December.
Yeah, I suppose. That's true.
I mean, we could do it the week after maybe. Town office will be open after Christmas, right? Yep. Sorry, I live on BIW schedule. Thank you.
So it'll be next Thursday after Christmas,
Yep, that's the one thing.
which would be
30th?
30th.
Yep.
All right, I guess. No.
You want to do that, so take that home and digest it. I also, the last page, I just sort of printed out what we did, the process that people seem to follow, and that Kathy seems to think works pretty good. So, if you see anything that needs to be changed or included, that would be good. But that's what that last page was. Okay.
Just like that.
All right, anything else from you committee members? No? Anything else from anybody? All right, well, thank you everyone for coming.
What happened to the electric fees for this year?
What happened to them?
Well, we thought they were gonna be metered, but they're not, I guess.
I still don't know.
So I presume that when you paid your rental, you,
I deposited $100 on it.
yeah, that you paid that also. So that went to Kathy, right, town office?
I don't know where it went.
Okay, so if you don't know, I don't.
You paid $100, I would think, probably,
It was either 100, I
for the
thought it,
season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so, and then it was supposed to be metered, but the way the meters are set up down there doesn't coincide, the days Ted would read them did not coincide with the days CMP would read them. And he was reading different numbers than the,
Yeah, it just
The
did not, it did not work.
it
out.
just didn't.
No,
So I think the plan going forward for this year would be, we'll take a meter reading at the start of the year, and then at the end of the year, and figure out the difference.
Yep.
And-
Yeah, it's in the, I put it in the policies and, yeah, and I added something, I think, to the application.
and I probably should have a meter installed for the whole thing at where I am. Yeah, I think so too.
I don't think these meters weren't what I think what the previous select boards were expecting to be installed.
But they should be able to put one in there on those feeds coming to where I am. I assume. Well, I'll find out because I'm gonna ask about it.
Well, didn't we talk too about having not just like one outlet per stall or per rental space, but like two, like with a 110 in, 220?
Yeah, I'm still not clear, I don't even use 220 on anything.
No, but don't you, and I don't
And no
understand
one else
electricity.
is, other than I know down there. The only thing that could be 220 would be a hot water heater.
Or what about a coffee maker?
A coffee maker.
Or microwave? I don't know, I know
Not a microwave.
That's still one thing.
Is it?
Yeah.
But if you have, like,
But it is,
I mean, 2 outlets is not enough to plug in a whole business that requires electricity.
Well, that was the problem Bay Bulls was having, when he kept
Right.
tripping
Well,
breaker
that's
constantly.
what I was kind of driving at, yeah.
right. Yeah.
So we might be looking at upgrading again.
Or at least I should upgrade to the point of my own personal meter. And that
Just have
was,
CMP come in and put one in.
yeah.
Now, is that for us to decide, like, because there's, what, 9 different business spaces to rent down there? And what if we upgraded some, like, some just keep an outlet that you can plug in a fan and a light bulb, just say, or your computer and a light bulb, but some that you could have higher draw on? Is that for, like, something for us to decide, or not? Or do it to all places on the pier?
I mean, I think the reason they didn't meter everybody individually was because the cost was
Pretty high.
astronomically high.
Yeah, but,
And that's why they went the route that they did.
which is still pretty high.
And that still was a lot, but if you're going to, you know, if Frank's, you know, I don't know that you need to put like 220 in for 9 different stalls.
Right.
You know, limit it to 2 or 3, because not everybody's gonna need it.
That's what I was kind of thinking, have options. But I don't know. Is that something for us to kick around going forward?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, good to know. Alrighty. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Right? You want to second it, Ron? Great. All in favor?
Well, what they did was put the ground meters on them. So they plug into the individual thing. It didn't work well, it was difficult. So I think, Frank's right, I mean, he's the biggest user down there.
I know you're.
It's just
The rest of it, we could probably do that.
We worked on this. Just like this.
You know,
About his not doing it. Yeah, I hope he's okay.
Well, Lassie
But in
should. She should.
it's all about the and work it back up and try again.
The next one,
Well, let's hear it out.
you know, like.
No, okay.
Yeah, there's a certain time.
Let's shut it off.
Anywhere from 5 AM to, yes, there are certain classes.
Terry Howard. Terry.
It's open at 5 AM.
HELLE, I'm one of the
Depending
I
on-
understand.
For the
It's not a big
I
deal.
really,
But there are some
Kim could not get.
swim lessons and swim classes.